AP. AP, where are you?
Hey, hold on, I'm
Where the hell
coming.
is?
Give me a second.
Yay. Was late to the party.
Oh, hey,
Where
what
have
up?
you been?
What do you mean? I'm right here.
I've been taking care of the kids, cooking them dinner, giving them timeouts, and spanking them on the bottoms. Where have you been?
I've been out, I've been gambling.
Doing
and,
what?
killed a man. Just normal stuff.
I don't know whether to report you or keep you safe.
I mean,
Where have you been?
it's only been what, like 5 weeks, 6 weeks? Couldn't have gotten in
Feels
too
like
much
it's
trouble
been
in
forever.
6 weeks.
Do you know what it's like taking care of 27 children by yourself?
No, because we only have 22. Did you
How does
smuggle
that-
5 more kids into the family?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, look, okay, I'm here now. So what's on your mind? What do you want to do?
I don't know. I'm thinking we haven't done a podcast in a while. How do you feel about that?
Oh man, well that makes me sad. I mean, I love our podcast.
I
Well,
do
hey,
too.
look. I'll tell you what. Would you feel better if we recorded a podcast?
Yes. Let's grab the guys. Let's get you. Let's get me. And let's do this. The
Well,
kids
what,
can
right
wait.
now? Right now?
Right now. Right now.
Like,
I'm
right-
pumped.
right
Let's
now.
do this. Right now.
All right. Let's do it. Let's get the guys. Let's start a podcast.
Christ!
Ezio, man.
That's so good.
All right, we need to have an intervention.
Yeah, I
No.
agree, man. That's absurd. Dude, we need to like call the police, have them raid your house, take your BS away from you.
Curtis, when was the last time you saw the light of day?
I actually
Keep
did
up
have to go
Pokemon
out and
Sun.
take care. I actually did have to go out yesterday and deal with getting some shit to the donation area.
Oh my god, did your flesh burn? Like, did it ignite?
How pale are you?
The game's been out for 2 days, and I got it at midnight launch.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're genuinely concerned for Ezio's health. He might be inhuman at this point. He might have devolved into a hollow, as in Dark Souls. He might have actually turned into a Pokemon and is on his way to a third evolved form.
I've been playing Pokemon since it released.
When was the last time you slept?
I'm not gonna answer that question.
When was the last time you slept?
I'm actually not. I don't even actually remember. I think it was a second.
That's a bad sign.
I slept in.
I slept the last time I needed to.
I slept enough.
To be honest, yes, I actually did sleep last night.
All right, well, I'll
I
tell you
haven't.
what.
I have been having
tell you what.
issues sleeping. I will admit that.
There's probably a very good reason for that, and probably
I will.
some very
I
bad
will say
reasons
that
for that.
Pokemon is. It's probably 50% Pokemon's fault. I'll admit that.
Well, no matter what the fault is, we're going to get into those nitty-gritty details because, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 28th episode of the Super Fun Podcast. And
We
welcome
still do a
back.
podcast.
Yeah, welcome back.
Thank you.
Holy shit!
So,
Evening.
let's introduce the cast because right now we got 2 main cast members and we got 2 guests. So first of all, Groot, how are you doing?
It's been a busy weekend, but I'm doing pretty well. How about you, Blaze?
It feels good to be back in here along with all the rest of you, especially after this big break. What about you, Ezio?
You guys are keeping me from Pokemon. I'm on my run playing with Papa Leo, and holy shit, it's not as bad as everyone thought it was going to be.
All you hear is Badoop, and Ezio left the call. He's off playing Pokemon in his little world.
You guys keeping me from Pokemon. Bloop, bloop.
So you're doing good, I assume?
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing well as well. Thank you, Ezio, for
Yeah,
That's
For
seamless
leading
segue.
that right to him.
Start,
That was a great
Hi.
start
segue.
playing Pokemon.
My name's
and
AP, and how do I
Hey.
grammar? I'm doing good.
me. So me, AP,
I'm doing
me
well.
speaking English
Me-
good.
Me brain work, right? No.
Anyways, my name is AP. Welcome to the 28th episode of the Super Fun Podcast. We took a bit of a break, as the intro skit would
A
allude
bit of a
to.
break.
And but we're back now. We're going to continue weekly episodes, and we got a lot to talk about this week. Especially, I'll tell you what. There's a few games we're going to talk about this evening, and most of them, the majority of us can comment on. A few of them, all of us can comment on. But overall, my God, is there stuff to talk about?
Is there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Shit, I never would have guessed.
So, much to
happened?
Groot's dismay, the first game we're going to talk about is actually a game that me, Ezio, and Blaze absolutely freaking love, and that's going to be Dark Souls 3.
All of you.
Well, this would be a problem if you.
He left to
Oh,
go
I'm
play
sorry.
Pokemon.
I don't have it anymore.
That's not my fault.
You
Right.
weren't playing it anyways. The point is,
Yeah.
so Dark Souls 3 has a expansion that came out. What was it, a few weeks ago? A month ago?
Month ago.
Month ago. And,
Roughly a month
yeah.
ago, give or take.
We were speculating
less.
on it before it came out. It came out, and we've been playing it and loving it. But apart from that, we've definitely got some stuff to talk about in terms of our analysis of the storyline, of the expansion of the game itself, as well as the new PvP arena, which there's discussion to be had. So first of all, let me open it up. Blaze, what are your thoughts initially as an overview on the expansion?
As an overview of the expansion, I actually, I really, really enjoyed this expansion. I can't wait to see where this leads. The part I enjoy about it the most, though, is the aesthetics of the new area and the direction they're leading with that. We've seen this before back in Dark Souls 1 with the Painted World, and that's made a return in this Painted World being Arion
There-
Dell.
Yeah, the Arion mispainting from Dark Souls 1.
Mm-hmm. And it's something that I really like just adventuring into again, and especially with the new characters guiding you through. I found it to be very interesting and very much stroke. Wow, I think I'm having a stroke.
Yeah, I
It
was gonna
stroked my
say,
curiosity.
You're having a stroke. I'm stroking something. Am I right? All right.
I certainly hope you're not right. Now, I would like to say, if you're listening to this and you have not played the DLC, I foresee spoilers. So,
Yeah, two things.
Yeah.
Number one, spoilers. Number two, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Yeah, if you know
What the fuck is wrong
nothing
with
about
you?
the expansion,
I don't
you
know. There's
understood
nothing wrong with
nothing
me,
of what
but
I
there's
just said.
obviously there's nothing wrong with me, but there's obviously something wrong with the three of you.
clearly, we're the Dark Souls addicts. Dude, here's the thing, and this is a brief tangent. I loved Dark Souls. Ezio got me hooked with a free code. He's like, hey, anyone want to play Dark Souls 1 for free? Freaking hooked. Nothing has been able to take me away from Destiny consistently, except Dark Souls. And then I stopped playing it for a while after Dark Souls 3, went back to Destiny, and then randomly I started playing Dark Souls 3 again with our friend Gage. And it's hooked in me again. It's so good.
And me and Mr. AP here started a Dark Souls 2 playthrough because he's never played it before.
Oh man, that's a story to tell. I want to tell it now.
I just
but
want to say that Mr. AP here went on like a 20-minute tangent about the fact that some jackass is like, nope, can't get into my forge. Can't
Look,
get in there.
look, I'm actually
Here's your key.
we're probably gonna do. Look, there's a lot of games that we could do playthroughs on. I think that Dark Souls 2 is a playthrough we're definitely gonna do, just because it's gonna be very entertaining listening. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but my God, that game. I want to love it, and there's things I do like about it, but I got a lot to say about
It's
its
a
constructive
massive
criticism.
love. It's a massive love-hate relationship. It'll be like, "Here, come here, buddy. Come here. We love you," and then it punches you in the kidney and then steals your.
So we'll get there. But back to Dark Souls 3.
It steals your fruit snacks.
Back to Dark Souls 3, though. You mentioned the aesthetic, and I actually really, really agree with that. One thing when playing Bloodborne, as a tangent, I loved the game, everything about it, but the aesthetic of the entire game was pretty dreary. And Dark Souls has some dreary, but it has, especially Dark Souls 1, has a lot of different moods and color schemes and elements that raise the mood and tempo. And
It has a very high contrast to its dreary notes.
Yeah.
To cut in, that's because Dark Souls is one of those games that tells the story through indirect means. Well, Soulsborne and the Bloodborne, Dark Souls, blah blah blah. They
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
their stories in indirect means, such as the environment, the characters. They don't shove it down your throat. So the environment is a way of telling you the story, and that's why Bloodborne is so dreary, because that's the state of all that's going on there, and that's why the Dark Souls 3 DLC is like how it is, because that's also trying to tell you the story through the environment.
And I get that, but I also appreciate that they didn't take the story in an additional dreary route,
Yeah,
because
I get you.
it's not that Dark Souls 3 was dreary overall. There was definitely enough levity and lighter color schemes throughout that it didn't feel particularly dreary compared to other darker games. But I loved the fact that they took it to a snowy place, because even the painted world in Dark Souls 1, there was snow, but it still felt dark and dreary. But this
It was, yeah.
snowblind and foggy, and it was just a totally different aesthetic that I thought really fit.
It kind of reminded me. I don't know if Blazer AP. Well, okay, I actually think I already know the answer. The one of the DLCs in Dark Souls 2, the Crown of the Ivory King. There's an area you go into, and it's absolutely covered in a blizzard. You could go into one of the boss fights, but he'd be invisible if you didn't get rid of the snowstorm. And I kind of got the feeling, a similar feeling.
Nah, just carry a torch in there.
I don't want to fight a giant invisible ice tiger. No, thank you.
Spoilers? Call. We haven't gotten there
Call.
yet. though.
You know,
I've heard stories about it, but I've never actually fought it.
You know, I gotta give Dark Souls credit. You know, I'm not a big fan of the game. You know, I'm gonna be doing a playthrough at some point with you guys. You know, I'm probably gonna be the comedic guy that's saying what the fuck to everything going on.
For
But
science.
you know, but honestly, I gotta give Dark Souls credit. One thing that they really, really succeed in for me when I was playing, and that I enjoyed the most, was the physics engine. A lot of, I mean, the fact that when I hit my sword on somebody else's sword, and it actually creates sparks, and on top of that, just the general combat of it is just very, very, very strong, and it's unlike any other game. And I have to say, it's quite impressive with what they've done with that and how much focus they put on it. So, you know, really, really nice on their part. And the environment's really nice too. You know, the trees, the grass, the stones, everything about it is just absolutely beautiful.
See that rock? I love that rock.
That is a nice boulder. No, but for real though, that's a good point. And
No,
the temptations to transition towards the PvP. But Ezio, you got something on your mind?
no, he said the trees, and I'm like, the DLC.
Oh my
The
god!
trees.
Hey, that's a beautiful tree. Oh look, it's got sparkly little branches, and oh my god,
Oh,
they're
and it
chasing me!
moves.
And
Like,
and
oh my
it picked
gosh, I'm
me up,
impaled.
and it picked me up, and I'm dead.
All right,
Yeah.
so we got two branching paths here for a good transition. We can talk about the overall experience of the DLC beyond the aesthetics, like the bosses, the story progression, and ultimately the loot, and then we can talk about PvP. Where do you guys want to go first?
Let's start with PvE.
Okay. So what do you guys think of the story progression and ultimately the boss encounters?
Think it is absolutely amazing. I love
up.
I love the
You know,
trees.
Tyler,
I
building
love
off of
the
what you
trees.
said.
I love that rock, man. That rock right at the beginning. Ugh,
That is a
It
nice
made the
boulder.
DLC, man.
Yeah. I nicknamed him Jennison. You know, he held my hand through most of the game, and he
guys
guided me through
laugh.
the expansion so well.
You guys laugh, but there's like a rock in Dark Souls 2 that heals your equipment.
I don't want to hear any more
thought that was a tree.
about that abomination that
It's like a
claims
rock
to be a Dark
tree
Souls
thing.
title.
I don't know, but anyway,
Okay.
I
so-
like the story of the DLC.
I'm pretty
especially
sure that was a
since
spirit tree, wasn't it? Along
was
with
something. It was something I don't remember.
along with
but,
the cursed rod of Greatwood, which is actually really interesting lore stuff if you want to get into that. But how
Yeah.
about we don't for
Not at
this?
the moment.
Yeah.
But I like how the story was set up, because they did say the next DLC was going to be continuing on a story that they showed off, that they started in this, and I think we got quite a few hints at it. So Mr. Blaze and AP, have you heard the lines of dialogue from the white-haired girl in the painting?
I have. I didn't
Uh,
necessarily retain them because
There
Yeah,
is-
same.
There is one particular line that really caught me that she said. She says, I can't remember the exact wording, but she mentions Uncle Gale is looking for the dark soul of man.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that line.
Yeah, well, for people who aren't familiar with it, the dark soul of man is the original dark soul that gave humanity life and everything. So I think that's going to lead, and that phrasing is leading into a hint into the next DLC where, I don't know, we might get some really big finish with it. I don't know. That's just a theory. But I feel like that line is heavily implying what's going to be coming.
That would be super interesting. Go ahead, Blaze.
And going down that road involving the Dark Soul itself, I think it would be very interesting to see an end to a Dark Souls game, whether it be in the DLC or in another game if they do decide to make it, which I doubt. That doesn't involve linking the fire or ending the fire. Like that's not a factor in it.
Well, remember, in this one, and spoilers, but at the ending, you can choose to extinguish the flame, and permanently, which in the past Dark Souls games, you either had the option to either light the fire or walk away from it. You didn't actively extinguish it like you could in this game.
Hey, can you pee on the fire to extinguish it? Just curious.
I don't think that's gonna work.
If you imagine it really, really hard, I bet you could.
Oh, okay.
I think the fire would be like, okay, well, this fucker's getting burned.
Okay, can we go into the bosses, or would that be too spoilery? I mean, we could just talk about our impressions of the overall encounters being spoilerless, or we could go.
Well, that's gonna be difficult because some of these, one of the bosses in particular, is gonna be kind of hard to describe or even talk about without going.
I know what
massive
to say about them.
spoiler.
You know what?
I know what to say about them.
Let's
you die
not
a
go
lot.
into it.
Let's
say this. If you're listening to this podcast and you're looking for an analytical Dark Souls playthrough breakdown, this probably isn't the place to go. We're going to give our impressions of the encounters and of the overall experience, and maybe recommend purchasing it or not.
Just direct message Ezio. There you go, problem solved.
Yeah, for real. Exactly. But let's talk about our impressions of the experiences themselves, and we can probably talk about the boss that's in the lower region without spoiling the twist that happens a bit higher up, if that's fair.
Huh.
Twist and shout. Twist and
I really
shout.
like that thing that they did with the trees. You know?
hey, listen. The rock is more beautiful, okay? Stop talking about the trees.
If we're not gonna talk about the bosses, then let's talk about the loot.
Do you guys want to talk about the lower boss?
Can we talk about the rocks?
You know, I'd say at this point, especially since we have other games to cover, in terms of time investment, we'd either have to go all in balls deep and talk about the bosses and go spoiler depth. But it's probably better. Let's go on to the loot. If you want to see the bosses, play the expansion. If you don't want to play the expansion but you're curious, watch some playthroughs. If Ezio has some good ideas of people to watch with good commentary, we can put it in the description. But in the meantime, let's talk about the loot and then the PvP of the Dark Souls 3 expansion.
Yeah. We got some good loot in this expansion. I love that Millwood Great Bow. People that hate getting shot by it. It's so funny.
So if you could outline maybe the top 3 weapons for general PvE that have been released with this expansion. And
PvE
then,
or
just
PvE?
PvE first, and then we'll talk about PvP globally and with the expansion.
I don't know if you consider it a weapon, but the Millwood shield is a rather nice thing to have around for PvE.
100% physical block plus health regen. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Exactly. I mean, it's a small regen, but it's still there.
It's a health regen. That's
exactly. It's better than nothing.
And it stacks with the blessed buff and the Sun Princess ring.
Okay, so there's a dope shield, which I haven't seen because I'm a pyromancer and have not used the shield in like 9 months.
The only shield a pyromancer should ever consider is that Grass Crest shield.
I mean, I'm just never going to use it. I'm going to always rely on my weapon, my pyromancy, and my dodging. I do want to optimize for PvP, but for PvE, I'm never going to use the shield.
The road I went with my Miracle Caster was I threw away the shield and just dual wield a catalyst. and a sword.
Now, real fast, mention the stuff good for PvE. The problem is a lot of the stuff in the DLC is honestly better for PvP.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
of course.
that's
Like
fair.
we're looking at that Gladius weapon. That
Oh
seems
yeah,
to
that
be
thing.
all the talk of PvP.
That thing wrecks. Same with the Croakwills, the rapier with the throwing knives.
Okay,
Yeah.
then let's transition that direction. Let's talk first about what they introduced in PvP for this expansion, and then we can talk about some of the gear that's the most powerful for it.
They introduced a giant ring and just said kill each other. And I love it.
With matchmaking, which is freaking
Yeah,
dope.
we're looking at separate world arena with matchmaking.
They've always. Here's the thing, though. We fully expected it to happen because they always introduce it in the Dark Souls DLC. Like the Notorious the Abyss DLC, and 1 gave us that. I can't remember which. I think the base game actually in Dark Souls 2 gave us it through the 2 of the Covenants. And then, of course, in this DLC we got the PvP arena,
Which you
And-
can access through any covenant, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
But your color
and
does change, so aesthetics.
color does change. It does, and I always rock in with Blade of the Dark Moon.
Same. High five.
That
Nailed it.
dark blue.
Okay, so we got a custom arena with matchmaking with multiple categories. You got 1v1, you got
Yep.
group battles, you got a lot of different options.
You say
for
group
Got
battles?
2v2s,
The,
Did you
honor-based
just say
battles.
group battles?
The base stuff is duels, which is 1v1, where no Estus can be used, and I believe Ashen Estus is I
It
think
is allowed.
1 use. It's like 1 use, I think.
Hey,
It's half of whatever you have.
one of you just said
Then-
group battles, not group battles. I didn't know I was in
Moving
the
on.
game. I didn't know I was in the
I
game.
don't know what the group you're talking about.
Well, apparently I'm one of the trees that, flies after you and kills you, so this is beautiful. I'm very happy right now.
It's a good spot
Y'all
to
are-
be in,
Y'all are getting killed by my kind.
unless you're in PvP or PvE, in which case you're going down.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Moving on.
So what
Yeah,
about what
I
about
have
the,
a follower spear.
What about
Yeah, I
the
don't even need to
gear?
get close to you.
What about the gear you can find? The weapons, the pyromancies, the other spells, miracles. What's kind of the meta right now in PvP for Dark Souls?
Right now it's actually in a fairly shifting state. People are finding weapons that were once kind of garbage, like the war pick, and that got recently buffed that are actually awesome now. Like when I say the war pick was garbage in PvP, it was garbage. You couldn't do anything with that thing. But now they fixed it so that the swings carry momentum, meaning you step forward with each swing, and it's amazing for catching people trying to roll away.
Oh yeah, especially now that we have poise. The war pick has some killer poise in it.
Yeah, poise is okay. There's the whole working as intended joke. Let's just get clear. We're never gonna get Dark Souls 1 poise where you can just kind of stand there and emote
Oh, no.
Notorious while he's swinging at you.
Howl
That's not
monster
gonna
is
happen
dead.
again.
It's never coming back. It's never coming back. Do not make it come back. We don't want this.
I liked it.
Truthfully, it's kind of back, but only in certain situations. Because we don't so much have poise as we have improved hyper armor.
Okay, Ezio, we don't talk about that monster that you invented. We do not want to see that in PvP.
Still can't believe that thing works.
I don't
Ezio,
even know if
you
you
were-
can consider that working.
You were the problem with the internet in 2016.
What was your percent? It was like 340% armor carry weight?
Yeah, or something like that. I couldn't move, but nothing could kill me.
Oh my god! So that's what you were demonstrating, but you didn't tell me the
then-
reaches in PvP that it had.
Yeah, and then the weapon art and the axe he was using was thrusting him forward so he could move at like lightning
yeah.
speeds.
Oh, he showed me in PvE. Oh my
Just
god!
like, hello, just like running around in full half-bulls and whatever the hell I want.
Oh my
So
gosh.
can't,
I don't
that's
even-
gonna-
I don't
that's-
even wanna
that's
know.
That has to be patched somehow. I don't know how, but it has to be. That is so dumb.
Well, here's the thing, and this is actually a really interesting point for Dark Souls PvP. I'm coming into it from a shooter PvP perspective, where you've got clearly defined strategies, and then you've got the ability to adapt based on a situation and create alternate strategies. But that's all within the confines of a bubble, where you assume and outer reach of the bubble, where nothing can exceed that. Now with Dark Souls, you've got these really out there strategies that you can't really predict and may have fatal flaws or not. Maybe they're just really, really, really strong in one area. But even if it has a fatal flaw, even if there's a way to defeat it, so few people are exploring it that it's really difficult, especially in the moment in the arena, to come up with a strategy against it based on the meta that you're used to.
Here's the difference. In a shooter like Destiny, like, you can constantly improve your skills, but it's like you're constantly in kind of the same bubble.
Yeah, because your abilities never really change.
With Dark Souls, though, you could be a Dex Master and be rolling around everywhere, and then get blindsided by some guy in a loincloth and a giant stick with a freaking cute, like a giant weird hat on his head. The mushroom hat,
yeah, right.
Sandhouse crown.
The Xanthus crown.
Yeah, you could be blindsided by the guy with a giant stick, a loincloth, and a giant mushroom for a head.
Yeah, what do you have to say about that, Tyler?
Who's Tyler?
I don't know who I am.
I'm lost. Who are you people?
And that's why I like Dark Souls PvP over a lot of others, because you don't know what you're really gonna be fucking with.
I've gone head-to-head against someone whose entire strategy was to roll at me to cause me damage. It was beautiful.
You know what I used?
Armor Thorns?
Yep.
When I was playing with Ezio once, and somebody joined our... whatever. Invaded our realm, or whatever you want to call it. And... my smart idea was Ezio gave me this thing where I could morph myself into something. And so what I did is
tree branch.
I morphed myself into a tree branch in the middle of a stone room.
No, you turned yourself into a, like, plank standing up with, like, a skeleton body on it, and you were just, like, in the corner.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he figured out where I was.
Well, here's the funny thing. I started fighting him, and he tried to shit talk me, just like, oh, so funny, you guys suck. I'm just like, chill the fuck out, bro. It's no problem, you died.
So
yeah, he was bamboozled by the master of bamboozlery.
Here's what I want to say about this that I think is super interesting. In Destiny, you've got a bubble of potential loadouts and gun combinations and ability combinations. Ultimately, you're in a bubble. There's a limited number of possibilities, and the community as a whole has identified those and identified the strongest, and the limiting factor is gun skill and decision making. With Dark Souls, it's not about gun skill. It's not about landing your shot precisely, because so much of it is based on proximity and it's based on timing. I feel like a game like Destiny, it's gun skill, but with Dark Souls, it's about theory crafting. And it's about identifying strategies ahead of time and then coming into it and implementing those with timing, with coordination, and with precision. Admittedly, a bit more forgiving, but the main input factor is theory crafting ahead of time and building a strategy going into the battle, as opposed to just going in with whatever and then having superior gun skill to win the battle, even if you're under-geared for it.
Of course, but that being said, there's a major factor of it being the skill of the player. Like, if you got two people running in with the same gear, the same build, the person with the higher skill is going to come out on top.
Of course, but if you have two people with identical loadouts and identical strategies, I feel like the skill gap is lower in the sense, like, there's more room for forgiveness in a certain context. In a shooter, where you literally have to aim your gun and land your shots, and if you hit him in the body, you do damage. If you miss, you don't do damage. But if you hit him in the head, you do more damage, and consistent shots do enough damage to get the kill. There's more punishment for missing your shots, whereas Dark Souls...
There's punishment in Dark Souls.
There's some major punishment in Dark Souls if you screw up.
Let me clarify. I am not saying that there's no skill in Dark Souls. I'm not trying to make that comparison. I'm just saying there's a higher punishment in terms of controller joystick skill in a shooter versus a game like Dark Souls. It's close, but it's not identical. But the skill gap in Dark Souls is planning and preparation for the fight and building a build to overcome your opponent before the fight even begins. That's where there's still skill in the fight, and there's a lot of it, but I'd say the difference between a winner and a loser with equal skilled opponents in Dark Souls is preparation.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with what you're saying, but you also have to admit the same goes the other way around, where if someone goes in with Kvastov, OG Kvastov, the white one, not the yellow one, and goes up against the Grasp of Malik, both of them same skill, otherwise exact same gear, whatever, same tactics, the person with the Grasp is going to come up on top.
I mean, yes. But my point is, if you have identical loadouts in Dark Souls and identical loadouts in Destiny, and then you try and like modify the skill of each player in both games, I feel like in Dark Souls, if you have the same loadouts and a 10% differential in skill, it's going to be a close fight, and the higher skilled player will win. And
Let me cut in for a second.
Go ahead.
Having invaded quite a bit, preparation is part of it, but knowing how to change plans and strategies mid-fight is insanely important too. Like, if you invade someone hoping for like a 1v1 or a 2v1, and then come up with like a 4 group, you gotta quickly change your tactics and figure out how to take them out.
Okay, that's totally fair. I think we're talking about two separate things. I'm strictly talking about the arena. I'm talking about Destiny PvP, where you're 1v1ing in engagements or doing something like that, versus the Dark Souls arena.
Well, even in the arena, knowing when and being able to quickly change strategies, like, if you watch some PvP videos, there are people that can go into their equipment inventory menu and change every single piece of the equipment. I think the world record for changing every piece of equipment, like armor, weapons, rings, and everything, is like down to 6 seconds.
Okay. You know, I'm prepared to admit that they're different categories, and
yeah.
I'm equating gun skill to quick thinking and adjusting and button locking, where you adapt your strategy logically and then implement it with switching weapons and armor and loadouts quickly. It's not the same skill, and they probably require the same level of skill, but it's a different type of skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Like, honestly, I think what we're talking about here is they're just so close of ideas that we think we're talking about the same thing, but in all reality, it's apples and oranges. They're both fruit, but it's still apples and oranges.
Bro, I'm talking about celery. Are you high? Yeah, so, okay. So, do you guys think this introduction for Dark Souls 3 with the PvP arena is... I mean, I'm confident you guys think it's a good thing. Do you think it's enough for Dark Souls 3? Or do you think
it's a good start?
It's a good start. I don't think it's as rewarding as it needs to be.
Yeah,
to keep people in it.
I feel like what they gave us was a good start, but I'm hoping that either an update or the next expansion is going to give us more. We'll have to wait and see, and I'm confident that because of From Software's past experiences with their expansions and how well done they were made and how much they've improved, I am very confident that we're going to be getting more from what we have now.
Well, let me ask this, because I'm pretty much ready to move on to our next topic, but I really have to ask this question.
Go for it.
When thinking about the investment game of Dark Souls PvP, especially, I played Dark Souls 1, but I didn't play the expansion, so I didn't get to experience the arena side of that. Barely played Dark Souls 2, another story for another time. And now Dark Souls 3 is my first experience really playing in the deliberate, I am choosing to participate in PvP side of the game, as opposed to being invaded. And I've never invaded once in all my Dark Souls career. Not because I'm opposed to it, I just haven't done it. But yeah, I feel like in a lot of games, when you're fighting PvP, there's an investment game. Destiny, you're playing PvP, you can get loot. You can rank up your faction for that. There's a reason to do it beyond the experience. You also get rewards for it. And in Dark Souls, there's a negligible inherent value to invading beyond the experience of I'm going to hunt you down and I'm going to kill you because it's fun for me to do that. But it seems like the majority of the experience is, this is what I want to do. I want to ruin your day. I want to ruin your playthrough. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to wreck your day. And when you mentioned that you wanted there to be more for the expansion of the PvP experience, especially for the arenas in the investment game. What do you think they could do to make the investment game for PvP, especially in the arena? Invading is a whole other beast, but in the arena, what could they do for the investment game to make it more rewarding?
First thing that comes to mind is Covenant rewards.
Here, give me 1 second, and I'll get to the pros and cons of that. But I think at the very least,
of course,
for a victory, you should get an Ember. Just right off the bat, you should get an Ember for winning a match.
I respect that.
That makes sense. It's not a powerful item, though it is a useful item.
Yeah, it's a currency that you have to balance when playing with friends.
Yeah. As for Covenant rewards, I do agree that it would be a nice idea, but I do see some problems because, all you have to do is win 30 matches for any given Covenant, and you can just max them out and be done with it. Plus, there are some people who legitimately get up to those high ranks in those Covenants. Like, I believe Blades of the Dark Moon are actually tracked through the roster you can find in the game.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure. That's a whole different beast. I'm not going to mess with that, actually. But I will agree that it would be a nice way to rank up your Covenants.
I wasn't saying that was what they need to do or that's what they should do. I'm just saying that's the first thing that comes to mind when
I get that.
I was saying that it didn't feel as rewarding as it needed to be, and I was thinking, well, perhaps Covenants could be a thing. And I don't know. It's not like that was the best thought out example.
It was the first thing that came up,
Yeah.
Exactly.
One idea I remember reading about when I was surfing the Dark Souls Extra Life when they were talking about this, is that after X amount of wins, maybe you get an item to give you a free stat allocation, considering you only get 5 per playthrough, and to get another 5, you need to play through the game again. Because Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 2 mentions, there was an item you could get that every so often in the game, I believe, where you can reset your stats near the beginning of the game. And I think it wouldn't be an awful idea if after maybe X amount of wins, you get an item for resetting your stats however you want them to.
Okay, that'd be interesting. But don't you think that would kind of lose its usefulness after a little while, though?
Well, here's the thing. People love to change their builds, to try out new things constantly. That's why I keep going into my new game pluses and everything, because I keep using up my stat allocations. Because I like to change up my style and try out different things. So, playing in the arena to win matches to get the item to reset your build, I think would be a really good reward.
So that's speaking from the perspective of somebody that's at the upper echelon of Dark Souls players. For someone like me, who's more of like a mid-tier Dark Souls player, I'm thinking more from the World of Warcraft model, where you compete in the competitive PvP environment, you get resources that you can spend as a currency on loot. Now, imagine if there was, it's one patch. They introduced a new patch where when you win, you get a currency, maybe one token of whatever, and they have 10 new weapons, 5 new armor pieces, some of them shields, whatever, and 3 spells. And they also have the ability to invest those resources into rerolling your stats. And you have to compete in PvP to get this gear. They balance it so that none of it's overpowered, but it's interesting, offers new playstyle opportunities. And you can play to either reroll your stats, or you can get new pieces of gear you can only get through PvP. And you also get an Ember if you win, and whatever else.
Let me, the thing is, the idea is interesting, but it deviates a bit from how Dark Souls has done its PvP arenas in the past. To be honest, most of the time, the PvP arenas are mainly you get stuff for bragging rights. Like in Dark Souls 2, again, after you win 400 matches, I believe, you get a special aura around your character whenever you're being summoned that shows off that you've won 400 matches, and it changes the aura along with whatever covenant you're in. And that was a big thing in the Dark Souls community back in Dark Souls 2 when that was introduced. They were like, oh shit, that guy... it was a big thing, so... well, again, I'm speaking from someone who has Dark Souls experience, so... everything like that, so I'm used to this stuff.
Yeah, of course.
while I would love for the PvP arena to offer us something, I don't think it needs to go up to the point of giving us like these unique weapons, because as far as I remember, no weapon has been in the Dark Souls series been completely locked behind a PvP wall.
I get what you're saying, and here's the main contention of this argument. You're speaking as a veteran Dark Souls player. I'm speaking as a late coming but relatively experienced Dark Souls player, and I think that there's a difference between the legacy of the original games and the evolution of the game as it moves forward. If it ends at this expansion and they don't do any more Dark Souls games, it would make the most sense for them not to change it, because then it would retain its original legacy. But if they intend to continue, it would benefit to start to take what they put in place and evolve upon it. And we may have differing opinions on what that may look like, and I'd love to explore it more. But this late into the podcast, I think we might need to move on.
Just one last point on the whole any Dark Souls thing. This is the whole status of that. Just wanting to explain that before we move on, is that they have not they said that this was kind of the end of this Dark Souls story, and there's going to be one more expansion after this. They have not completely debunked the possibility of a Dark Souls 4, but they have said that they are working on a Dark Souls-like game at the moment. So that's the whole situation of Dark Souls at the moment.
So that could be Dark Souls 4, it could be Bloodborne 2, it could be a totally different game.
It could be a whole new Dark Souls-like game. Yep.
Okay. Well, I guess in that case, we can discuss more when new details arise. I would like to see changes just to make the game more replayable from a PvP perspective now that I'm getting into it. But I understand, especially the more I've been playing Dark Souls, I understand the majesty of what it already is, and I understand the fear of it changing from what its roots are. I get that. So we'll have to see what happens, get more information, form new opinions as that information comes out.
Yep.
And I feel like we have so many differing opinions. We need somebody to, like, almost like a third-party perspective to watch over the conversation and try and give a third-party objective. Perhaps somebody that can overwatch the conversation. You know, just somebody that can put on a sombrero and sombra the conversation, if that makes sense.
Where's a wall I can smash my head against?
Episode 28.
I'm going to charge you against a wall.
Still making horrible puns.
That pun was glorious. I would like the comment section to comment
you
on how
got
glorious
voted
that transition was.
The worst person in the year of 2016.
So what do you guys think about Overwatch?
Which is saying a lot.
I think Overwatch had an update that I may have played a few hours of.
Sorry about that noise. You can continue on.
I think everyone's collective hatred against my admittedly glorious, terrible puns slow down the conversation. But so Overwatch, Sombra, new update, new changes to classes, and specifically Sombra coming out. So that's it. You played a lot of it. What do you think so far?
I think this update is freaking amazing. They added 2 very popular game modes that have been going around. One of them is pretty much Trials of Osiris for Overwatch.
I saw that.
And honestly, I've been seeing a lot of people just saying that they prefer that one because of the... Okay, I'm not trying to be Destiny versus Overwatch, by the way. I'm simply stating what I've been reading, is that they prefer the Overwatch one because you have to carefully choose which heroes your 3 members of your team pick.
Yeah. I wasn't even thinking you were going to take in that direction of comparing one versus the other. I actually thought it was super interesting. Or Overwatch, you always had this 6-player amalgamation with a few different game types, but the fact they introduced a 3-player game mode was awesome. And the fact that it was elimination was super awesome. It almost felt like they were taking advantage of something super successful in Destiny and implementing it in their shooter. And it worked out really well. I think it's super fascinating. And whether one's better than the other, that's a matter of perspective and opinion. But
that is completely
up
to preference, honestly.
It's a phenomenal contribution to Overwatch's very complex and interesting set of characters and gameplay.
Yep. The other game modes that are introduced real fast, just so that we can have them all on the board, is the 1v1 mystery hero mode, where you and one of the players fight off against each other, where you're both given a random hero, but the catch is it is the same hero. So, for example, if me and Mr. AP here get mashed up together, we may both get mashed up as May, which would be an awful fight.
Down. Give me McCree and it's over. No, not McCree.
It's May, meaning the fight would go on literally forever.
Oh man, no! I'd freeze myself in a corner and then fall off an edge.
You're actually
lucky
good at Overwatch. Oh man,
I am good at Overwatch with 2 characters, and that's it.
Well,
and even then, I'm out of practice.
Mr. AP, the advantage on the map that the game modes are set on is that there are no edges. There are also
I will find a way.
There is also no health packs.
Yes. So that's the same with the elimination playlist then.
Yep. And then another new game mode is 6v6 Mystery Hero. That was the fan favorite of the weekly brawls, so they made it a permanent game mode. In short, it's in 2 teams of 6v6 where no matter who you choose, everybody in the game is randomly given a hero every time they respawn.
I mean,
so yeah.
I definitely I think that's a great thing, especially for the audience that's stuck with Overwatch and enjoys the game and has spent some time with it, because they get thrown into different characters where they're not facing the same team of freaking 3 Lucios and
I really enjoy that mode. Just real fast, Groot. I really enjoy that mode because it allows you to try out heroes you're not normally used to. Plus, it's always hilarious whenever you get a really funny mix-up of characters.
The only problem I can see from that, and what would be my frustration, is my ultimate. What happens when you respawn? Do you lose all your progress towards your ultimate?
Yep, you lose your ultimate.
What if it switches you to the same character?
If it switches you to the same character, which is very unlikely considering there's 20...
But in theory possible?
It is in theory possible, as it has happened to me once before. And if that's the case, yes, you do keep your ultimate charge.
I feel like that's kind of frustrating, but it mends for a good kind of, get this kill streak and then be able to use your ultimate.
It also rewards high survivability.
Yes.
Yeah. There's a reason it's a very popular brawl, is the fact that it has limited ultimate usage, which let's go into the patch real fast. They actually did nerf the ults across the board, where it takes 25% more charge to use all ultimates in the game. They did that because in the most recent competitive tournament that they had at BlizzCon, it was just constant ultimates. So they were like, let's try to tone this down a bit. So they made it so that it would take slightly longer, and so that it would, feel like it's a more important thing and that you should think twice before using it.
Like a super in Destiny. Made the comparison. I think that's actually a fair adjustment.
Yeah.
And in fact, when Groot was mentioning his reservations about that, and to reference Blaze's comment into that does put a higher priority on, you got to survive long enough to use your ultimate. Because one thing I felt in Overwatch is, it's punishing if you die, in the sense of you've got to be contributing to your team effort to get to the objective, to move forward. But ultimately, especially if your team is relatively holding it down and you die, you're like, whatever, I'll respawn, jump back in, still got my progress, charge forward, fresh cooldowns. And the idea that if you're low health, you can't just charge in and throw your life away, but rather I have to, I'm 80% to my ultimate, let me fall back, try and get a health pack, regroup, reposition. That's a much more tactically sound approach in general, but it also it rewards that, because other people that don't do that, they're going to lose their ultimate, switch to a new character, and start from scratch.
Yep.
I like that.
Likely lose their ultimate.
Very, very likely.
Very likely, 95% likely. But one moment like that goes into the whole use your ult at the right time is that I was playing a comp game to try to get my competitive points up, and I of course was playing Reinhardt. I earth shattered and stunned 5 members of their team. The Sombra on our team ran in there invisible and EMP'd them all, making the. For those of you who don't know how her kit works, her EMP makes it so that anyone caught in it cannot use their abilities or their ultimate for 6 seconds. And she caught 5 of the enemy team because of my Earth Shatter. Then the D.Va on our team ran in and just popped the mech in the middle of them and set it to self-destruct.
That's
That
great.
is savage.
That's beautiful.
I literally just saw like
See?
2 of their teammates just kind of stop and just like, well, we're boned.
That is a work of art.
That's when somebody makes a YouTube video, makes it go fade to black and white at half speed and goes, I will remember you.
Exactly. It was amazing because literally we got a team wipe there. And we just all just kind of stood there just like, yep, we win. We win.
I think what happens is right before it blows up, it pauses and says "to be continued" and plays round out.
Exactly.
On the next episode of Dragon Ball Z.
But why don't we move on to how Sombra works? Speaking of that, because her kit is really interesting. As a quick overview of how her kit works, she's a 200 health offense hero who has, let's see, she has invisibility, which of course, well, makes her invisible, and
also allows her to sprint.
Yeah, but here's the thing about invisibility. Unlike a lot of games where there's like a shimmer, her invisibility is 100%. If after it completes, you cannot see her unless she's like less than a foot next to you.
There is something to be said about that as well, though. It does take time to enter and exit the invisibility.
It takes 0.5 seconds to enter and exit it.
Which, when you're there, feels like forever.
If you're getting shot at in the middle of a fight, then yeah, it feels like forever. But if you're using it smartly, then yeah. But
now, when you shoot and she's invisible, does it make her reappear again?
Yes,
you can't. If you pull the trigger, it has a time delay, and then you can start shooting.
Okay.
Oh wait, were you talking about if someone shoots Sombra or if Sombra shoots?
Well, both, I guess, actually.
Okay, that's slightly 2 different things. If Sombra shoots or does any of her abilities, it takes the 0.5 seconds to come out of the cloak, then she can perform an action. If someone's bullet hits her or if someone hits her while she's going invis, then her invisibility is canceled.
See, this ain't talking. This ain't no free action.
But when she goes invisible, she has an increased movement speed that's actually slightly faster, I believe, than Soldier 76's sprint.
Really?
Yeah, and the invisibility lasts for 6 seconds.
I might have to sign on Overwatch and test her out.
She's really fun. But another one of her abilities is the Translocator, which is pretty much a mini Symmetra teleporter that she can activate when she wants. She throws it, and then for 15 seconds, if she hits the same button again, she teleports to that Translocator's location, even if it's mid-throw.
It's almost like throwing a C4 in Call of Duty, but wherever that C4 is in the air or wherever it lands, you teleport to that spot.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
It stays in that location for 15 seconds, and then it dissipates. But I believe it has a 6-second cooldown.
I believe that sounds about right.
And then her last ability is hacking, where she's able to hack any hero in the game and make it so they can't use any abilities for 6 seconds. However, it takes about 2 to 3 seconds for the hack to fully activate, and if she gets shot while hacking, it interrupts it. Another cool thing about this hacking, though, is she can hack health packs to keep the enemy teams from using them, and speeds up their recharge.
Huh.
Speaking of which, I played a little bit with Sombra's in my team. Mm-hmm. And what I see them do from time to time before they run into action, they'll place that teleporter mine down and hack the health pack, and then run into action. Once their health goes low, they'll teleport back to it, immediately get that health, and then keep going.
Yep, that's a strategy that a lot of people like to use. And here's another thing. You can hack more than one health pack. Like, I was playing a game with Sombra, and I went and hacked, I was making sure that I was staying hidden, and I was constantly just hacking the entire field of the health packs, and the enemy team could not use them. and that made a huge difference because a lot of the time people who can't get healed by the support go and try to find a health pack, and if they can't, they're fucked.
Yeah. I mean, but I did get to mess around with Sombra a little bit, not too terribly much. I would like to address the damage output of that machine pistol she's got.
Yeah, the pistol. It's 60 rounds, and it has, I think, a little bit longer range than Tracer's machine pistols, but its spread happens a lot faster.
Yeah, the spread is almost immediate.
Yeah,
but
the spread's
almost no damage drop off until very long range.
The range is a little bit shorter than you think. I've messed around with it every so often, and it feels you can feel it, especially in the middle of a firefight.
I was running into problems with spread way more than I was with damage drop off.
Yeah. I usually try to make sure I was like a few feet away whenever I was shooting. That might have been a difference.
It definitely, you say she's an assault character. It definitely feels like she's more of a support character, not because of her abilities, but because her abilities allow her to be more of a disruption. And she has the ability to get out of sticky situations, to flank invisible or get out invisible, as well as either invisible or not in a flanking position to hack an enemy player. And she's really good at disrupting.
I wouldn't really say that's support, though. I would say that's more offensive, because that's kind of an offensive strategy, is to mess with the enemy team, and that's kind of... The support would be to, to not just heal someone, but give other players power-ups and stuff.
Real fast, there are two kind of playstyles that are very popular with her at the moment. One is a sort of support strategy where she kind of hangs back, but she makes sure that the health kits around her team are constantly hacked so that they can constantly use them. Because a hacked health pack stays hacked for a minute, and every type of health pack, the big ones and the small ones, only take 2 seconds to recharge. And then the other way that she plays is majorly disruptive, where she really messes with the other team, where she'll constantly get around them with invisibility, hack them, get rid of the health kits so that they can't just rush back to them, stuff like that. So she has different ways you can play depending on the player. Fun fact, though, if you hack a health pack, you do get progress on the healing medal in the end screen.
Huh.
I once got a gold medal in healing with Sombra.
That's actually pretty interesting.
That is cool.
It was hilarious considering we had a Lucio and a Mercy on our team. What the shit, you two?
Oh, did you get the end card as well for healing?
Yep.
That must have just been embarrassing for them.
That had to be. Anything else anyone would like to bring up on Overwatch?
No, not really.
No.
Seems interesting. I'm definitely going to dive back into it.
Or updates with
there's
balance.
The balances, they haven't been too major. D.Va did get 100 more health on her mech, but D.Va's health on her mech goes down pretty quickly anyway, so it just makes her slightly more survivable.
Where exactly is the crit now on her mech?
They haven't changed the crit on it.
Oh, it's still just straight in the face?
I believe so. But Soldier's assault rifle had its spread reverted back to its pre-nerf state, so he has a bit more range now if he bush fires.
Groot is stoked.
Oh, hell yeah.
Back in business, baby.
I'm trying to think of all the changes off the top of my head. I'm trying to remember. Like I said, the 25%, 25, I can't remember the actual number I said earlier. The increase in ult charge needed to use the ults.
You know what, Ezio? I think you're our numbers guy.
Oh god, why am I the numbers guy? Speaking of numbers,
hey Dado, Ezio, continue.
Damn it! I had one on top of my head. I was gonna. Okay, the nano boost that Ana can give no longer gives them a speed boost, which is actually a bit. It's actually a bit bigger than people were thinking because Reinhardt no longer can just rush at people anymore. I mean, he still could, and he can still kill people with 2 swings. It's just he's not as fast, unless you have a Lucio speed boosting him.
Oh God.
Hint.
Or
That's
Lucio's.
that's what
One
Ezio wants us. That's
Reinhardt.
what Ezio wants us to do is play Lucio and he'll play Reinhardt.
You better speed boost me, motherfucker.
Yeah,
Hey,
actually, if I get to play Overwatch again, which either I'm going to buy it or I'm going to find my way to hack around it, like Sombra, when I play again, I'm probably going to be spending a good amount of time playing Sombra. Just, I want to feel it out, and based on watching her play, I think it's going to fit my play style. So,
yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Honestly, I want to go into all the different matches not playing Sombra to see how all the characters mix with her, instead of, how everyone's just jumping in with the new character nowadays.
Yeah. Her list of what can and can't be... Okay, there's a list of ultimates, like, during the activation that can and can't be hacked. Just for a short... Instead of going through the entire list, I'm just going to give a very short overview. Any ults that are, like, sustained, such as Roadhog's Whole Hog, Reaper's Death Blossom, anything like that, if she hacks them, it automatically ends it. But ults like Trace's Pulse Bomb, Zarya's Graviton Surge, anything that's just like boom and it's done, she cannot hack and disrupt those.
Yeah, I saw there were some things, like Torbjorn's turret as well. At least, okay, so I was watching Mr. Fruit's playthrough, and there was some discrepancies about what could or could not be hacked. Can you hack Torbjorn's turret?
Yes, you can, and what it does is it shuts it down for, I believe, 6 seconds.
6 seconds.
Would have been more excited if it turned it.
Yeah. The thing is, though, is that, well, Torbjorn's turret has 360 auto-aim. So the strategy for that is that have a teammate distracted, like a Reinhardt or a tank like a Roadhog, to hold its attention, and then have Sombra go around and hack it so that it would be shut down.
Okay.
Fair.
There is one more thing about her EMP I forgot to mention, by the way. Her EMP goes through shields. And completely dissipates them. If she EMP... Okay, you know how when Lucio ults, he gives everyone like a massive shield?
Yeah.
Sure.
If Sombra EMPs right after that, those shields are gone.
Now that is just a solid dick move.
Yeah, and any hero that has shields as their health for those 6 seconds after an EMP, those are gone too. Like, it just obliterates any shields in the area. To be fair, the area is smaller than you'd think. I think it's about the range of what is it? I think it's around the range of May's ultimate. Except it has a vertical range as well, about the same size. It's around there.
Okay, oh, you say there's a vertical range. Does that scale downwards as well?
Yes, it goes downwards. It's like
if
a
you're in the air
sphere
above someone?
Yeah. It's a giant sphere around Sombra, but you also have to have line of sight with them. You can't just do it through a wall and hit everybody. Yep.
Well, I think it's pretty dope. It's a very powerful combination of skills, and there's a lot of application for it. And I think if you want to play Sombra, you got to toy around with it. You definitely got to pursue it, whether or not you think it's your destiny to play so. But in any case, I think maybe we should talk about the concept of destiny.
All right. So one of the biggest discussions of Destiny lately has been skill-based matchmaking, and a lot of people are saying, "Oh, skill-based matchmaking needs to be what we do away with and move towards connection-based matchmaking." So I want to bring up a couple points because Bungie this week addressed in their update, like, "Hey, this is what we do," and basically told everybody, like, you need to quit your bitching, because you don't know what you're talking about, which I totally respect, and I realized from that point. So I want to clarify some people on some things. So Destiny's priority has always been a good connection for you. Always is to pull you with players that have a good connection in your area and with you. So the way it works is they find players who have a good connection with you, and then within that pool, they choose people that are close to your skill rating. And then if they can't people within that pool, they widen the skill level. If they still can't find stuff, they expand the search with a more variance in connection quality. And then once enough players are selected, they break them into equally skilled teams. So, Trials has always been kind of, not focused on that, but it's more focused on good connections with similar scorecards. So, in synopsis, these people complaining about skill-based matchmaking don't realize like connection quality is the highest factor when it comes to Bungie's matchmaking. It may not feel like it, but I'll let you know this. It's the amount of times that people actually get connected to somebody with a bad connection is very rare. It's maybe like once every 5 games. And even then
the main
it's not
issue is that servers alone.
but that's the thing is like from a technical standpoint, the way their network tick rates work is their combat damage is at 30 hertz, which is 30 times per second, and then you receive I think it's scoring and ammo spawns at 10 hertz, so that's 10 times per second. So it's not even that bad. So it's totally dependent on how you have your network set up. So like if you're running Wi-Fi, you're gonna have not that great of an experience sometimes, depending on your network, your speed, your connection factors. My biggest suggestion for people is if you're having a problem with your connection or issues with other people's connections, there's this thing in your router panel, which this is going to mean gibberish to some people, but there's a thing called universal plug and play that you can enable. It's UPnP. And instead of doing your port forwarding or your DMZ to forward all your ports on it, turn your port forwarding off, turn your DMZ off on your router, and just enable UPnP. And that'll allow it to operate a lot better. That provides not only for a better Xbox network experience, that provides for a better just overall Destiny experience as well. You'll notice better connections across the board, better gameplay, and you won't have to complain and stress yourself out every 5 seconds because you want to throw your controller through a window.
So that's super practical input for the average player who has been hearing rumors and hearing conversations about SBMM versus CBMM. And I think here's the root of the problem. It's threefold. Number one, you've got a lot of YouTubers and Twitch streamers who are talking about skill-based matchmaking and complaining about it. But the thing is, most of those are in the top at least 5, usually 1% of PvP players. Now, at that level, even if it prioritizes based on connection first, then it tries to narrow it down to skill, and it's a much smaller pool of players because they're at the upper echelon of that. If you look at a bell curve, you got the lower end, you got lower skill players, the bell curve goes up, you got medium skill players, a lot of people to choose from. Then you go back down the bell curve towards that 1%, very small sliver of the player base that are streaming, YouTubing, have the highest skill level, and they're trying to find a good connection, and the system's trying to do that, but still trying to fit them in the parameters of a good skill-based match, and you get bad connections as a result just because there's so few players to choose from in that skill bracket. Now, the second echelon of the problem is you got tons of people who are looking at these YouTubers and streamers as, their source of news and the people that they get their opinions from because they trust them, they're high-skilled players, they've got intelligent viewpoints, and they're complaining about skill-based matchmaking. So they regurgitate these viewpoints that they see from these YouTubers and streamers as skill-based matchmaking is the problem. When there might need to be some tweaks to the system, I'm not saying it's perfect, but ultimately, the biggest complaints from the most visible sources are from the top 5 to 1% of players in PvP who are experiencing these problems. If you look at the last podcast from the Destiny Community Podcast with Tefty, Holtzman, Pope, and Breyer, you've
Shameless
got...
plug.
Well, yeah, unrelated to us, but just a podcast I love and have been following for a long time, back when they were on Planet Destiny. You got Holtzman, you got Tefty, who are both pretty high up there. I'd say Tefty's top 5, Breyer's probably top 10, maybe top 5. Holtzman's definitely top 1%. And Pope, he's on the verge of being casual since he had to take a step back and focus on his family. And he's talking about playing on his son's account, his wife's account, and his account. and he's able to outline the difference in the skill levels he encounters and the connections he's having. And at a moderate skilled player, based on his statistics, on all 3 accounts, he had no problems, no connection issues. It's only at these higher echelons of player skill levels that they were having consistent connection issues.
Can I address that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, like, I really want to say, and this is nothing against those top 5 to 10% of players, if 10%. You know, it's really like not frustrating, but annoying to constantly. And I got respect for these players; they're good. They've earned their skill level. It's just they don't look at the bigger picture or the smaller picture of stuff like that, and that's really the problem. They don't. It's kind of like it draws back to a think before you speak type deal. I think they're sometimes so caught up with what they want and what it needs to be to try and make the game better just for them because they think they're the best in the world, and that doesn't go for all of them, but for some of them it does. It just for the average player who I consider myself above average when it comes to PvP, especially as of lately. And I've been doing a lot better than I usually do, and I've had no problems with connections. Maybe just once, it was that one guy. Remember when we were playing what was it, Trials, and it was First Light, that one guy that was lagging, and I even messaged him, and I didn't complain about it. I messaged him and I said, you know what, hey man, I just wanted to let you know you're lagging. I didn't know if you wanted to maybe restart your router or something. Gave him a few suggestions and stuff like that in a respectable way that wasn't raging, saying you have a horrible connection, that's why we lost. I said either way, you guys won that fair square,
Mm-hmm.
And he replied saying, sorry man, I got a bad connection, sad face. I was like, no big deal, it's not a big deal. That kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
And it's out of people's reach. And instead of like the top 5% complaining all the time, it's so annoying for somebody of my skill level or my casual level to hear, because then it creates all this uproar inside of the community that then Bungie needs to focus more time on double checking their stuff, and it takes away the energy from the other stuff. And it just creates this really toxic environment. So I really wish like these top level streamers would stop just thinking about themselves and their people and start realizing there's more of a fan base. There's more factors to it than just them. And you're right. It boils down to the fact of, okay, connection level, and then, okay, I need to find somebody in this skill range for them. And there's such a small pool of that. They're going to get connected to bad connections every now and then, but so what? It happens. It's a video game. Everybody in the end is just trying to have fun, And yeah, you know what? Bungie's not perfect when it comes to network management. There's a lot of things they need to fix. Dedicated servers would be a perfect thing for that. But you know what? The world's not perfect. The sun shines the next day. They'll figure it out one day, And for now, to me, it works. And that's coming from an above average player who has more of a skill range to kind of locate with and has more connection opportunities that way. I get connected to a bad connection every now and then. Do I bitch and complain about it? No. It's just another game for me. It's just one game.
I hear what you're saying, and I 100% agree with you. And I think that the YouTubing streaming community is starting to realize that. Again, I would love for you to look at the last episode of the Destiny Community Podcast, because I think that was the most relevant episode where Pope Bear, being not one of the top 1%, was really fighting to have that viewpoint heard and try and convey that point.
Pope and I should like meet someday and just, we would be the voices, for that kind of stuff. That's never going to happen, but you know what? That'd be cool.
But that's the thing, man. Like, this is
something I would.
Yeah, go ahead, Blaze.
I would like you guys to consider is that although your points are completely valid, I agree with what you said so far. What we're running into is the democracy problem, where the majority is perfectly fine and they've gotten what they've wanted. And of course, that's most of the people. That's a good thing. But there's still those people who don't agree with that, or people who are outliers to the majority, who are kind of stomped down and left in the dirt. So and for their voices not to be heard is a disservice to it. I do think that they need to be heard, but I also agree that they don't need to be the overarching voice, the voice that is heard above all else.
Well, and it's not like they're being ignored. Like that information that I just provided you is from the most recent Destiny update, Bungie weekly newsletter, that they
Of
send out
course.
every
I'm
week.
not saying that they are being ignored or that they should be ignored. It's just there's a certain level where it needs to be where they do need to be heard, but it's not all we need to be focused on.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. Because
Yeah,
what I'm trying to do is acknowledge your viewpoint, Groot, and
yeah.
acknowledge Pope's viewpoint. I agree that there's admittedly a much larger percentage of the population that the system is working perfectly for. They're getting good connections, they're getting good skill based matches, but the fact that you've got this percentage of players at the upper end, and admittedly, it's a small percent of the population,
And
but
at the lower
they're
end.
consistently getting dumped on. Like if you listen to Holtzman on that episode, and not even that episode, listen to him on the last freaking 15 episodes. His biggest complaint is the fact that he can't get into a Trials match or an Iron Banner match without getting matched up against a consistent team of red bars, and he has a is it Net Duma router, whatever the router is, where you can see where they're actually coming from. He's consistently matching up against players from the opposite end of the world because it's matching them up based on skill. And I'm not saying that we need to cater everything towards the upper echelon. I'm not saying that at all.
They need to address their area though, like where their skill bracket is coming from and their connection base. And honestly, I think the best resolution for that is if connection quality, like it's a simple not if simple if statement, but for layman's terms, it's okay, you get matched up with this group of players and then it matches with your skill level. It then creates a filter that says if players network strength equals weak, then submit message, fix your shit, not allowed to play the Crucible for until your shit's more stable. That's and I know that's a kind of a crappy way because it kind of creates that filter for, oh, you can't play Bungie until you fix your stuff, but at that skill bracket, if it's happening so often, that's kind of where it needs to be at,
Well,
That's kind of
that doesn't fix the problem when you've got two people with solid connections, but one's in California and one's in Southern Australia because
it's
they're in
just a
equal skill levels, but the
it's a
connection between the two players on a peer-to-peer basis is weak enough that it
but
creates connection problems.
that's not how networking strength works or anything like that. That's the thing. It's
That's
like
how
I
latency works in
but
between peer-to-peer connections.
that shouldn't matter when it comes to a game like Destiny because here's the thing: if both players have a good connection, say so, you and I, for instance, right? You and I play. You're in your state. I'm in my state. So we're on opposite ends of the country, right? So my latency to you, because I run latency tests all the time, is no problem. We both have a very when your connection wants to work, we have a very very strong signal to each other. No problem. There's no frame rate issues. There's no hertz issues. There's no bad connection there. But it has to depend. These people that are playing need to realize they need to have their general network set up perfect. It's not just Bungie's filter because Bungie can't control home networks. It boils down to the fact of okay, this person needs to enable UPnP, disable DMZ, disable port forwarding, and let UPnP do its thing. And that's the thing, and that's why I suggested if players' signal strength equals crap, then boom, can't play the Crucible. And like I said, it's hard for Bungie to just be like, oh, this person is in Washington and this person's in Maine, and oh, okay, let's test their latency. Like that's too much going on at once. It's okay, they both have a very good connection. There's going to be no problem there. If they both have a strong connection, it doesn't matter if you're in Estonia and I'm in the United States of America. As long as you both have a good connection quality, yeah, there's going to be a latency issue, but it's not going to be as bad as it is normally, where somebody's like rubber banding or something like that. Two strong signals on opposite sides of the world, they're fine. They're going to work together. You're not going to notice a big issue. Bad connection on one of them, you're going to notice an issue. And that's usually, you can pinpoint it back to not being Bungie's fault. It's usually one of three things. It's going to be they don't have UPnP enabled. Two, they don't have the right ports forward. Or three, they've got a bad outside wire or a bad inside wire on the coaxial cable that needs to be replaced. Those are the
Man,
top three things.
Here's the balance. We're talking about connection-based matchmaking, which ultimately caters more. Actually, I'd say skill-based matchmaking caters more to the middle tier, but overall, connection-based matchmaking appeals more to the whole, but it certainly doesn't punish the middle tier as much. as soon as you start saying stuff like that, where you get punished for not having a proper internet connection, if you happen to be a high school student and you're not in control of your internet connection and you start getting temporary bans from Crucible because you either don't have the knowledge to change your settings or that won't even be a factor because your connection is not good enough to do it, but your skill's good enough that you can play against Holtzman or Real Crafty or KJ Helvey to be punished for that, it's a double-edged sword, man. It goes both ways, and
But
it's
it's
not a
not
simple
being
problem.
punished. It's not being punished because you just literally you say, okay, Bungie always has in their error codes. Go to bungie.help and type in this error code, and it'll
Yeah,
show you how to
that
do it.
doesn't help when you're playing trials and you get baboon errored and get a loss in your card because their algorithm said
Oh,
your connection wasn't good enough. Sorry, you
and
got
you
a
know,
loss in your
honestly,
card.
that's not how it should be. Honestly, if you get DC'd from a game, it should literally take your team back to orbit. It should kick you out of the game if that happens, obviously, because that's going to happen anyways. And it should literally take your team out of the game and count it as the game was void. That's how it should be. It shouldn't be, no team should get a win for it. No team should get a loss for it. It should be considered a null and void. That's a perfect solution to it.
It's
There's
not a
no,
perfect solution. What if there's a lot of reports of DDoSing. If you're 4 and 0ing the other team, and on the last round they DDoS one of your
you know,
members and your entire fire team gets booted to orbit,
you know what DDoSing is though, right? There's a good way, there's an easy way to detect it. And
Groot, you're talking from the perspective of somebody that already knows all this information, has the tools to deflect it. We're talking about not the upper 1% of IT people.
no,
We're talking about
this
average
this
players.
this is the thing though, is I'm not trying to give a solution to people or anything like that. It's not on the people's end, but on Bungie's end, it needs to be this. Simply a DDoS is because a DOS is only a single connection going after you. That's a denial of service attack. DDoS stands for distributed denial of service attack. So basically, what that is when the way a botnet works is somebody infects a ton of people's computers, right? And they have access to these people's networks. And what they do is they basically take all those networks that they're connected to and flood that single IP address full of those connections. So it overloads their network and basically, hypothetically, kicks them offline because there's too many connections going to it at once. That's what a distributed denial of service attack is. And there's a difference between that and getting, babooned or something like that. So Bungie's thing that they need to do is learn how to distinguish these two things. So one, if there's an issue communicating with a port and it kicks you out, and that's the network disturbance, then okay, kick back and that give us like error code baboon for that, right? And then the problem is their connection issues are all over the place and don't tell us exactly what they are. So they need to create one for that. That's basically if user is kicked offline because too many connections sent to it, and there's an easy way to detect that. All they got to do is just create a new error code, and if that error code exists and that's what happens, then simply just void the game, null and void. Now, to most people, that may sound like it's crazy to do and that's so easy for them to do, but that's the thing, is it's a very difficult thing to do, and that's something that they need to figure out. I mean, from my point of view, I don't do video game design. I work in IT. So I have my ways of distinguishing that stuff. I'm not too sure how on their end they would distinguish that. But that's something that they really need to focus on, is distinguishing those two things, and then they have it resolved. The one thing is detecting it. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
And that's something that I leave up to them. Like I said, I can tell if I'm getting DDoS'd. It's happened to me multiple times. In their terms, though, I'm not too sure how they'd be able to tell, but that's just a suggestion. I think that would be the perfect resolution to it. It's not punishing people. It's showing people, okay, you know what? You're trying to DDoS someone, you're screwed. It should be an insta ban. Honestly, if it's detected, instant ban that person, and then void the game as if it didn't exist, and that's or no, I'm sorry. Don't void the game for that. Just for the team that got DDoS'd, count it as a void for them, and then the other team that did that, give them an instant ban, basically. For the people, if it's just a normal general disconnection in terms of a port being an issue, or if it's like a network issue, void the game for everybody. It's not fair for the losing team to have two people, and it's not fair to the person who just got disconnected to have a loss on their card. And that's a really bad imbalance on Bungie's part. And yeah, they can come back and say, oh, you know what? It's your connection. It's your issue. Resolve it. That's not the way it should be. It should be them working with us, you know?
And I agree with you. I'd say everything you just said, 75%, maybe even up to 85%, I agree completely. I think that their ability to detect the nature of the disturbance needs to be better targeted and better cultivated. I've had enough times where my internet just burped and then I got booted from my trials card, booted from my team, then instantly
AP, did you call your
reconnected.
ISP yet?
Let's who's Gabe? Let's continue.
I said AP.
Who's Gabe P? He's
I said AP, you little shit.
point is
I'm gonna come over. I'm just gonna, I hate you.
point is
Road trip.
road trip. Point
I've
is
already done that.
true story. It was a rough time. Freaking pushed into a pool. Point is, I agree that they need to evolve their systems for detection and classification because there's too many times where a variety of different problems emerge that result in the same crappy outcome with no consideration for whether it's your fault, whether your settings are wrong, whether something's happening in your hardware, whether it was a malicious attack, whether it was your enemy's fault, but it results in the same ultimate end. I agree that that's the case. I do think, however, because we were talking initially about a very broad problem of skill-based versus connection-based matchmaking, and we went to a very specific rabbit trail down one path of potential solution. I think that it's much more complicated and there's more variables to be considered, not just for one potential solution to one aspect, but of this global tapestry that they've weaved of matchmaking, PvE, PvP, but specifically PvP, from general matchmaking to making sure that everyone has a generally positive experience, from newcomers alike to the top echelon and in between, from trials being a positive experience to not being booted with weasel errors and all the different causes of that. It's just so much more complicated, and I agree that you've got some very good points on what could be done to further that. And I would like to think, I have confidence in Bungie enough to say that I think that at least they're aware of those solutions and are hopefully working on that for Destiny 2 and maybe even before that. If they're not, yeah, God rest our souls and
The biggest,
get in touch with
biggest
them. But
the biggest one they need to focus on is trials and getting a loss for your card. I really think they need to implement, even if it's a DDoS at this point, they need to implement it. If somebody gets disconnected, it voids the game. That's really it. Not a quit, but if they get disconnected, it needs the void as a temporary placeholder until they can distinguish that stuff. They need to just make it so it voids the game. It's not fair. It's really not. I mean, there's plenty of times where you and I and others are having a really good card or a really good game, and then you just get DC'd, or I get DC'd, or the other person gets DC'd, and it's just not fair. And for the opposing team as well, if one of them truly gets DC'd, it's not fair for them as well. It should just void it out as a temporary placeholder for now. That's not hard to do.
No, I agree with you. And in fact, given that for the majority of the population, the mid-tier and below, skill-based matchmaking, connection-based matchmaking is at a good equilibrium. It's only the upper tier that's really having trouble. I feel like most people can forgive bad connections in Iron Banner because there's so much forgiveness, and the fact that so many games you can play. If you lose a game, whatever, you get a medallion, play another game. You can even win against people with bad connections. But with trials, where there's so much of a risk, that's been the number one thing that I
worry more about Warlocks than I do about connection and trials.
Dude, Warlocks are... I mean...
Love.
I don't want to say they're fine. I don't think they're perfect, but firebolts are a big problem. I would say this: I love when I play Warlock, I run Sunsinger, and I think fusion grenades, especially when you can rock double fusion grenades, they need a tweak. I think the aim assist and the magnetism of them is a bit high, so there are
feels
some
like old school arc bolt.
Yeah, I'd say that. I use fusion grenades very effectively. I agree they need a tweak, but I'm just saying in terms of like you can forgive that when it's one kill here and there. But the main thing that I think Groot is pointing out that I 100% agree with, I've seen this happen with my internet connection, which is not a bad connection, but I've got, contact your service, whatever. Point is, like, I've had this issue on and off for about a year and a half now, where my internet will be fine for days at a time, and then randomly, with no warning, it'll be like, oh, hey, I'm going to go take a break for like 9 seconds. I'll be right back. And then it comes back, but it's too late. I got weaseled, put a loss on my card. It's a huge problem. And it's not just me. I've seen streamers have it. I've seen YouTubers have it. I've seen friends of mine have it. And my connection may have that happen more times in a year than others. But the fact that that's the system in place where if you get booted because of your connection, you get a loss on your card immediately. And I recognize that's not something easy to fix because you could easily just, if you're losing a game, just turn off your internet, turn off your Xbox, and try and simulate that. It's a difficult problem to fix, but with Groot being an IT background, I do agree that there's got to be a way you can detect that.
That's very easy to detect because if you get DC'd from a game and it gives you an error, you're still online, you're still in a party chat. So all it's got to say is if connection still exists, then void card. If connection does not exist because they're going to be disconnected from the internet completely, then here you go. Here's a loss for your card. That's basically.
Okay, but here's the thing with that. Let's say you run into a similar problem. Your power just went out because there was a thunderstorm, let's say. You saying that should count as a loss?
Well, they're not going to get back on, and they're not going to be able to play again. So yeah, count as a loss. If their power goes out, their powers are going to be out for a while. So
yeah, I get what you're saying. Where that may seem like more of an injustice, but at the same time, like there's a lot of people that are reaping the loss on their card because of like common injustices. Whereas a storm knocking out your internet is such a rare occurrence.
Yeah.
And of course, that's also still something to be worried about now. But
I mean, honestly,
I'm just pointing out that the solution that you're giving currently is not a perfect solution.
It's not perfect. I agree.
Even if I was Bungie, I'd say screw it. Storms happen every now and then. That's kind of stuff that you can't really prepare for. Especially in a game, that's not really something you can provide a solution for. So that's something that if that happens, if connection does not exist, you get a loss on your card. It sucks, but you know what? I mean, there's no real way to distinguish a power outage versus somebody turning off their router, and yeah, it's a sucky situation, but I mean, that's how it should be handled, yeah, it's an injustice, but that's how it should be. There's no real way to prepare for that kind of stuff, and I don't really think there's a middle ground. And I want to go back to what AP was saying. I know we're getting short on time, but I really need to bring this up too because it's a call out from Bungie and a wake up call for them as well. I have perfect internet. I don't like bragging about that, but it's true. I'm hardwired in. I have a 300 megabit per second plan. I have UPnP enabled. Always have an open NAT. It's never strict. It's never moderate. And the lines in my house and outside are absolutely perfect. When I moved back here, I had my ISP inspect them, and they're beautiful. There's nothing wrong with them. Yeah, I still get disconnected every now and then. I actually got disconnected last weekend, if I'm correct, right, AP, when it was when we were playing Trials. I got disconnected, and I was like, wow, okay, that just happened. That's totally rare because my connection is literally foolproof, So there is a network issue that needs to be addressed. Whether I'm sure they're aware of it, but I'm sure it's really hard for them to find. If it was a simple walk in the park and something to fix, it would have been fixed by now. Because it's kind of an urgency, but they haven't. So it's an investigation open, or they're trying to figure out a way. They know how it's happening, but they don't know how to fix it. So there is an issue. Yeah.
That's why people have been talking about dedicated servers since year one. But most of the time, people have been able to write it off as, there's other issues and people's connections and whatnot. We're getting to a point where, yes, there's some adjustments we need to make, but overall, the pattern has shown that there is still a consistent underlying problem. If we're playing Trials, the competitive PvP event, and all factors considered, all variables accounted for, you get disconnected because of their servers in the competitive PvP event that severely punishes you for getting a loss, and a loss is awarded to you if you get disconnected based on their servers, that's not okay.
Can I say something just in regards to that? Is I want to let people know dedicated servers or not dedicated servers, whether it's P2P or dedicated, if you get disconnected because of your network, dedicated servers aren't going to help that. But if Bungie's able to resolve their network issue with their servers disconnecting you, there's no need for a dedicated server. It makes no sense. There's no real way for an investment because of that. Because if they resolve their network connection to the point where it doesn't boot you anymore, it's fixed. The only thing that you have to rely on is your network connection being reliable. And if you get into a dedicated server and you get disconnected because of your connection anyways, there's no point in having a dedicated server. So honestly, it's kind of a it would be, in my opinion, a bad investment for Bungie to do that. I mean, yeah, dedicated servers are nice, but in today's modern era of gaming with all these strong internet services, and better internet, to me, dedicated servers just don't make profitability wise, just don't make sense. Especially you have to hire network engineers, you have to upkeep all this maintenance, buy all these servers, and continue buying servers at a alarming rate for your growing fan base and game base. Honestly, if Bungie was to do that, the quality of the game of what it would be in the future and today would not be as amazing as it is.
So you think it's
That's
all based on coding? Like
I think
it's
it's all
in
based
their hands to
it's
fix the
in
coding?
it is in their hands, and that goes for every other game out there, okay? That's not just Bungie. It's literally, it boils down to the fact of once they fix their network connection, then there's no room for people to get disconnected because of their servers anymore. There's only the only two things that you have to worry about is your internet connection failing out on you or being DDoS'd. And honestly, if you're on a dedicated server, there's no way to prevent those two. And those are the only two situations that would happen once Bungie fixes their stuff. The only two situations. The only benefit for dedicated servers would be the accuracy of being able to tell when you get shot and when you die is going to be more updated. That's the only time. But once Bungie resolves their network issues, we don't have to worry about that.
In which,
That's
to that point, in the last future plug, the last episode of the Destiny Community Podcast, Holtzman revealed that they're at 30 hertz for
Yeah,
the
that's what I was
refresh
just
rate.
talking about. Yeah, that's what I was just talking about in 10 hertz for ammo and score updates. And that's
Whereas
good.
with Overwatch, it's at 60, and with what's the other shooter? It's
Call of Duty,
not Call of
Battlefield.
Duty, not Battlefield.
Uh,
The big one, Counter Strike. Counter Strike is
oh yeah.
120 hertz. So Destiny's already behind on that, which would help with some of that registration stuff where, people getting shot behind walls. Well, if he was registering faster, there'd be
hmm
more relevant real time information.
I'm
That makes
I'm
sense.
sure I'm sure that's in the future for 60 hertz. Whether it's unlimited because of network issues or their coding for their game. Honestly, it's all in their hands. Dedicated servers aren't going to fix anything. It's not an opinion at this point. It's kind of a fact. It would be a very, very bad investment of Bungie to do that. And the quality of the game would suffer. Their employees would suffer because if that's the case, then there might be pay cuts because of network engineers being hired on, and network engineers aren't cheap. The upkeep of the servers, the possibility of the server. That's the other thing you have to worry too. What if one of the servers fails? We see how often Xbox Live goes down. We
Mm.
might have to, worry about if their dedicated servers go down. We're gonna have to, that's a big contemplation too. That kind of stuff costs a lot of money. We're talking a lot of money, and things on the Destiny game would suffer from it. So it's a bad investment, and I think they know that, and I think the chances of them ever investing in dedicated servers is very, very low, and that's a smart thing on their part.
That's actually a really interesting viewpoint. In terms of I feel like peer to peer has seemed like a way of the past, and dedicated servers was the present and the way of the future. But the way you're presenting it, it actually makes a lot of sense that peer to peer can be the most effective under two conditions. Number one, the underlying code is sufficient to be optimized for that. And number two, the evolution of internet technology provides the most consistent method for people to sustain a peer to peer connection. And we're getting
Absolutely.
to the point where the technology for connection is more or less universally adequate. There's definitely going to be a percentage of people that can't get there. But that's like comparing people in a third world country to modern standards. Like it's eventually everyone's going to get there, and it's eventually is even a broad term because it's just expanding so quickly.
Yeah,
We're all
it,
getting there.
it boils down to once Bungie fixes their stuff, it boils down to the individual users fixing their internet and, keeping up with the speed. Yeah, some of them don't have the ability to do that because of the areas that they live in, but, that's dedicated servers aren't going to help that either, at all. They're going to have
Yeah.
a bad connection to the server regardless, and that's why P2P just makes much, much more sense.
Well, my mind just got blown because I mentioned earlier about regurgitating streamers and YouTubers' opinions, and not being an IT guy. Hearing what I've heard in the past about dedicated servers, it made a lot of sense. But hearing this from this perspective, I do think that. I mean, I agreed from the very beginning. Like Bungie needs to alter their code, and
Oh, yeah.
anyone that listens to the Destiny Community Podcast or the Planet Destiny Podcast in the last 6 months is used to anytime Tefty mentions netcode taking a shot. Like it's a drinking game. It's a thing. Like it's obviously been relevant for a long time, but the concept of that being the central issue as opposed to this phantom that we're chasing of, dedicated servers is going to solve the problem. It's interesting.
It's really not the answer, and it's okay for people to see that as the answer. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people just don't. With me, I look at other aspects of it. I look at the financial aspect, the technological aspect, and people are looking at the quality aspect overall because they're not very familiar with how that stuff works. And there's nothing, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they don't have the knowledge to be able to look at it that way, and I'm assuming that's how Bungie's looking at it. That's just the way that I'm assuming. It would be financially and quality wise, it just would be a very bad investment or not even bad. It'd just be a useless investment. Honestly, for any game really at that point. And it's not just Bungie.
And with a team like that, I mean, people love to talk trash on Bungie despite
Oh
what
yeah,
they produced and how much they've listened to their fans, but they have a lot of very talented, very intelligent people on their staff.
absolutely.
And they've made decisions that, a lot of people have disagreed with, but ultimately, I would say, like, from the very beginning, especially with Destiny 1 and with what we've learned post-mortem of the complications and the things that have interrupted their progress, they've done a phenomenal job, both of producing a beautiful, magnetic game, but
it's unlike
adding
no other.
content and responding to the community. I think we can trust that they're aware of these issues, and I'd say like recently everything that's been happening on Reddit and with everyone talking on YouTube and Twitch and the whole community as a whole, they're trying to acknowledge that they hear us. But I think it's true also that they definitely see a bigger picture than what the masses tend to respond to. And they're listening to the masses because they want to create a game that everyone wants to play. But ultimately, when it comes to solving these fundamental problems, like back where we originally talked about like 30 minutes ago, connection versus skill-based matchmaking, there's so many fundamental things that go much deeper, and there's much more fundamental problems and more in-depth solutions to solve those problems.
Absolutely.
We got to leave it to them, and we can voice our opinions. But I think, honestly, it's in our best interest to become as educated as possible to the
avoid the
actual
toxic behavior.
Well, toxic. That's the internet, man. It's gonna happen.
Oh
But
yeah.
Look. If you're on this podcast, if you're listening to this podcast, it's in our best interest to learn as much as you can about these issues and about what goes behind solving the problems. So that way, when we voice our opinions, whether it be on Reddit, YouTube, in Twitch streams, directly to Bungie on their forums, in Twitter, however we do it, let's actually think about what goes into solving these problems before we offer a solution. Because I learned tonight there was a lot more than I thought about it going into my opinions about how to solve this problem. and it definitely goes deeper.
Oh, absolutely. And there's more to it than just what I said.
And that's a great part about being in these conversations is that you can elaborate with people who know not necessarily more than you, but different things than you.
Yeah.
So we can all have a collective knowledge greater than the sum of the parts.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's a shared effort.
And it helps when we're not attacking each other or
Oh, yeah.
Bungie or
Or
skill-based
posting
matchmaking.
or posting on Reddit and trying the shame the company itself. I'm sorry, but
Or,
even if,
selling our services as a DDoS hacker for trials.
yeah. Oh, yeah, that's the big one right now. My biggest thing is, like, I got to let people know is if Bungie does have a network issue on their end, they're not going to come out openly and say it. They'll let you know once they fix it. They're not going to come out and say it beforehand because that can give them a lot more backlash than they're already having, and reputation wise too. You don't want to, the big thing about running a company like that or a game, you don't want to admit fault until you fix it if there needs to be a fix for it. So that's
the point is
that,
they're aware of the problem and they're working on fixing it.
exactly. They may not tell us, but there is.
And they hear us, guys.
Yeah, they do.
They were probably aware of the problem. And most of the problems we're aware of, they were probably aware of it before we were.
That's why they have testing teams.
But even the problems, like there have been problems, especially in vanilla Destiny, where we alerted them to the problems, and we helped with that. But now,
Loot cave.
At this point, like we're not okay. If you're gonna voice something on Reddit, on Twitter, on Facebook, anything, it's probably not original. And the person that you saw it from, it probably wasn't original. They're aware. They see the problems. They've been working on it for a while. They're going to continue to work on it till it's perfected. And I think that come Destiny 2, we're going to see a much more polished solution. I would love to see them adapt Destiny 1 to the standards that we'd like to see, but
I'd rather wait for it for Destiny 2 personally.
I agree.
That's just me.
I love the game that we have now, and it's not perfect, but I still enjoy it. I love playing Trials every weekend, going to Crucible. Yeah. If I decide to raid every once in a while, I'll do it, and it'll be fun. Not my cup of tea, but I'll do it.
Hasn't been my cup of tea either lately, and I'm the big PvE guy too, so
but
I don't blame you.
It's a fun game, and it feels good.
Yeah, I prefer Juice.
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
If Destiny 2, they pour these resources and all this feedback, which is valuable. All these people complaining and talking on Reddit. If nothing else, having 50,000 people complaining about the matchmaking and the netcode, if it does nothing else but light a fire under Bungie's ass and just makes them really focus on it as a priority, then that's a net win.
Yep.
But it does nothing if you're attacking them, insulting their families, kicking their dog, lighting their house on fire. It just doesn't.
Well, that escalated quickly.
If I see one more person, I swear, if I see one more person freaking go after Deej, even though he has no control everything over like that kind of stuff, he's only the community manager. I'm gonna go to their house and I'm gonna slap them in the face 5 times really hard. You know how like Marshall has his in How I Met Your Mother has his slaps? I'm gonna do one of those.
What did the 5 fingers say to the face?
Oh man, I forget that part.
Oh my god, come on, somebody get the reference.
Nope.
No one? Chappelle Show?
Nope.
Oh my god, there's like 30
Ezio's over there too busy trying to evolve his bloody Pikachu.
There's like 30 people listening to this that are face palming and
Pichu, you uncultured
it's just slap, right?
That is the correct answer, but the delivery was so bad, I might just crawl into a corner and die.
That was like you pun quality right there, and that's
no, that was, oh my god.
Now you know how we feel.
No,
to your puns.
No,
yeah, now you know how we feel.
You missed the pun. When you get my puns, you acknowledge the pun and you recognize how bad it is, and then you
know how
palm.
we feel. No, you know how we feel.
This is, oh my god,
no,
cutting edge culture
no,
from like
stop.
6 years ago.
You can't do this. No, this is just bad. Just stop, please.
Okay, everyone
Okay.
else that's listening
No,
to this,
just-
if you got the reference, please collectively face palm everyone else on the podcast and acknowledge that what the five fingers say to the face is slap. Please. Please do that for me in the comments. Just put that
No,
in.
please facepalm every time AP makes a bad pun. That's about 20 times this podcast so far.
20,
So
20 times, but do a golden face palm for this one moment where they freaking failed and fall short and didn't get it.
I'm playing Pokemon. I'm not taking that. I'm not taking the
Just to
blame for that.
clarify, the TSFP podcast does not condone self-harm. When face palming, do not hurt yourself.
As a second broadcast, the TSFP podcast does condone the use of face palms to verbally and physically assault both Groot and Blaze for not getting the Chappelle Show reference. This has been a public service announcement.
shut up.
You know, I love you both. And I love you, Ezio, even though you're off in the corner playing Pokemon, since we started talking about something we didn't want to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, I want to say this. We're talking about some very contentious issues, and I hope we didn't come across as being aggressive towards one another. We have different opinions, and we definitely have strong opinions. And I hope that it came across in the sense that we're coming from different perspectives, but we respect one another's opinion, and in a lot of ways, our opinions overlap. And we're trying, as a team, and as
It's
a
in
community.
it's in a constructive manner.
Exactly. As a team and as a community, we're just trying to contribute to the conversation to create the best possible game for Destiny, which is not even the sole context of the podcast, just this recent conversation. And we want everyone to just be constructive, have a conversation. Don't just have an opinion and attack. Just talk about stuff. Be willing to learn. Be willing to see a different viewpoint and evolve your own opinion and then come back with more information. That's the biggest thing. We're all learning. We're all growing. And ultimately, this game is evolving and we're evolving. And on that bombshell, there's a Top Gear reference for you. This has been the 28th episode of the Super Fun Podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll be back next week.
Bye.
We done? I can go back to Pokemon?
Yeah.
Get out of here, Ezio.
You're already back to Pokemon. Go away.
Maybe.
Nobody comments on that bad pun.
That wasn't a bad pun. That was actually good. That was knowledgeable and actually factually based too. So
And cut. You know, I have this fan in my room, and I use it to generate noise so I can sleep and not be woken up. And also,
that's what I do.
when it's hot, I have it circulating air blowing on me.
I don't even need the air to circulate. You know what today's high
Are
temperature
you gonna
was?
let me finish what I was saying, or just interrupt me and then take the conversation totally somewhere else?
I'm sorry. I feel like I'm totally more important than you, so I feel like I need to do that.
Well, you know what? Here's all I wanted to say. If my fan could talk, after everything I put it through, you know what it would say?
What?
Hey, Gabe, I'm your biggest fan. Just let it sink in.
That might be the biggest face palm I've ever given you before. Literally the biggest face palm I've ever given you before.
I mean, it is my biggest fan. It's the biggest one I got.
Stop. Just stop.
You can't tell me how to live my life.